Hi, everybody. Al Bernstein here at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, where we are getting ready this week for the Manny Pacquiao-Tim Bradley matchup. And one of the major stories for this fight has been the rivalry between the two trainers. Freddie Roach, of course, Manny Pacquiao's trainer, who is a Hall of Fame trainer and has won the Trainer of the Year award multiple times. And on the Tim Bradley side, it's Teddy Atlas, who, of course, is a longtime boxing trainer, but best known to the boxing public as an analyst on ESPN. He's come from the broadcast booth to train Tim Bradley in his last fight and now in this big fight against Manny Pacquiao. And we heard from both of these men leading up to the match.
Bradley said yesterday you would not allow any of the other stuff to get in. You're not that kind of, it's not your DNA to allow the other stuff to get to you with Freddie. So he says that would be a shame because it's not going to happen.
It's not important. He doesn't, Freddie doesn't influence my life. My children do. My family does. Friends that I choose that I'm to be around me do. My fighter does. That's my responsibility, not him. He doesn't influence me in any sort of way. I mean, shame on me if I was to put weight towards that and thought towards that and any kind of concern of any kind towards that. What kind of person would I be? I have more important people to be concerned about, and he shouldn't be concerned about me either, rightfully so.
Hey Teddy, what fights have you guys been studying outside of the two fights that Bradley already had with Pacquiao? Have you been studying the Mayweather fights, any of them?
You're a genius. No, the Mayweather fight and Marquez fight is obviously fights that make sense to look at. Those are two guys that gave him some problems. And obviously there's a reason for that, and we look at that. We use whatever's available that makes sense, and I think that we've seen. I think what happens when it's probably the same in. It's probably the same thing in football. Very contact sport. When you're competing against somebody as talented as Manny, and he wins this fight because of pure talent. I mean, he's a freak. The combination of speed and power that he has, it's uncommon. And so when you're competing against someone like that, I think what can happen is that you see the obvious, but you don't see the stuff before the obvious. The obvious is the explosion of ability, and you're aware of that. His straight left hand, his right hook, the quickness, the surges, the hurricane of punches that come at you. But you don't see what comes before the storm. Listen, I don't do that much, but if I do anything, if I got any worth to me other than this apple, I hope I can see and help my fighters see what comes before the obvious. Because he already knows what the end result is, that it's coming forward with just a bushel of punches, again, that are explosive. But before that, there's some warning. There's something that shows you something, some delay, something there before that happens. And that's what I was hopefully trying to impart to my fighter and see what that was. Again, before, I don't know if it's proper analogy, but I think it is. Before a storm comes, the air gets sucked out of the place. You can feel it. And the skies darken a little bit. Well, before an explosion of ability comes from Manny, and obviously resulting in punches, there's something preliminary to that. Excuse me. There's habits that come before that. There's action. And those are things that we've tried to look at and be aware of, and are aware of. Now can we do something about it? That's the question that keeps me up at night. You know, man, I wish I would trade this apple in for a crystal ball. I would make the. I might actually want to do this again if I had a crystal ball.
What he brings to the table and is that, in his history of boxing and so forth, we customize it and so forth, his mentor. And I'm hoping he's going to make a better fighter. I hope he makes a more aggressive fighter, actually. So that'll help. Yes, of course. That'll be more exchanges. It'll help the fight completely, of course. But then he says, well, he's going to have the Marquez type fight, which is a counter puncher. But really, I think he's just trying to bluff us on that one because the Marquez, is completely counter puncher, and there's no way Brad is going to be Marquez. You can't emulate somebody else. It's like foolish. I know Ted is smarter than that.
His opinion was he had Bradley had absolutely no way. Just he believed this time that he was going to whether it works or not.
Yeah, but I'm not going to go into it because his former coach was a good coach also. Because they had one fight together and they looked pretty good in the fight, but look what he had in front of him. I mean, let's face it, Rios was like really out of shape in that fight. I never expected Rios to ever do that, but the thing is, he was fat and out of shape and he didn't have much in front of him. So I'm not going to give him credit for making him look good in that fight. I mean, I could have looked good against Rios that night.
So at the end of the day, this whole thing with the final game, because it just kind of just getting the fight going, let's get it going. Was there anything?
The thing is, I don't think it's a motivating factor in the fight. I'd rather give my fighter direction of how to make adjustments and go to win the fight, technically, yes. But the thing is, Teddy's always been the storyteller over Michael Moore and all those guys. And he has good stories and stuff like this, and the fans kind of like that a little bit. So maybe it's good for boxing and sells tickets. I'm all for it. They don't win fights for sure. Maybe something planned. I'm not sure because I like Adrian. He's actually a friend of mine. I like him. He's a nice guy. He's always respectful to me. But he's just not at that level yet, or maybe never will be at that level. Mayweather, it'd be too much for him, and Mayweather's retired.
Freddie had the fight taken 6 years prior to when it did. When it was initially supposed to happen, do you feel that it would have been a different outcome and a much more competitive fight? Of
course, yes. But, we can only guess about that.
As for you and Aram, you guys are very enthusiastic about making Pacquiao versus Canelo, or you guys are all for it, but Oscar De La recently stated that boat has sailed on that fight. What do you take to that, and do you think a spectacular performance over Bradley can change his mind, and entice him to actually make Pacquiao Canelo if Canelo gets past Khan?
I mean, he's scared, let's face it.
Scared of
Manny Pacquiao. Because Manny kicked his ass.
But Canelo holds a serious weight advantage, and you said that you would actually ask for a hydration clause come fight night for that fight to actually happen, right?
I've thought about it, yeah, but until that fight gets made, I don't know exactly what will happen. But there's always negotiations and how much weight catch weights and so forth. The game is a lot different now than it used to be.
But you think that Oscar remembers back to when he fought Manny, and he's like, I don't want that for my guy?
That's the worst memory of his life. I'll never forget that one.
Going back to that fight, and then looking when you guys were 5-1 underdog, I think I remember because you bet on the fight, and then now getting towards the end of the fight, where do you see just in those last, what has it been, 6-7 years of Manny's career?
Well, it's just boxing is very good, and Manny's been done very well. He has knocked a lot of people out with the higher weight division. Manny's a much better puncher at 40 than he is at 47, and I attribute that to why he hasn't knocked anyone out in a long time. It's not that he's not hitting harder or anything. He's just not that big a person. think is Manny's actually a better 140 pounder out there, and if he does fight again, I do hope that it's at 140 and not 47.
Well, guys like Margarito and Algieri, those fights you could argue should have been stopped maybe anyways.
Possibly, I think you're right, but that's the way it goes.
Freddie, and you mentioned that Manny can still make 135.
Manny can still make 135, but he walks around at like 138. No problem.
Do you think if he does decide to continue after this fight and maybe a move down in weight can prolong his career a couple of more years?
I do, yes, and I think there's some good fights at 40, with Terrence Crawford and those type guys. I think that might be the biggest fight out there at 140.
Would it benefit Manny to fight Crawford at 140 or 147? What's your take on that?
I'd like to fight at 140, but again, negotiations will do everything. But again, Manny's best fighting weight, I think, is 140.
Well, what do you think about Crawford fighting on Postal? They say it'll probably happen here in July, and Postal's a very tough fighter, as you know.
And Postal's my fighter, and fight we're kind of looking forward to, because we don't have many other offers out there for Postal. A lot of people don't want to fight him right now, and Crawford's one of the few guys that has said yes, and that could be an excellent fight. I mean, both very, very good upcoming fighters. That's a 50-50 fight. I'm not going to say that we're going to go blow this guy away because I know Crawford's a good fighter and Postal's a good fighter also. But I would love to see that fight though.
Yeah, Freddie have retired in the piece. It sounds like the people doesn't want to fight anymore.
He sounds a little bit like that, but he got hurt in that last fight at Postal, and he's getting a little bit older. But maybe it's time.
Manny announced yesterday, at the press conference, he said it's his last fight.
Yeah.
But you don't sound like you think that that's going to hold.
I don't really think that, yes, because until you've taken to the stipulation of him becoming a senator. Can he be a senator and a fighter? Is there too much on his plate there? Being a senator is much more demanding than a congressman, so maybe there won't be time enough to do both. So, but one thing I like about this is that he can retire happily because he's had a great career, and if he does retire, he does have something to fall back on. So most fighters don't have something to fall back on, and that's why they make comebacks. If Manny Pacquiao retires, I think he will be one time and it'll be over, and he'll become a senator, and he'll be happy with his life helping the people of this country.